Welcome to my campfire. Let's tell a few stories. So, I'm a folklorist, and what that means is that I'm interested in the sort of traditional knowledge that people share with others, either by their actions or by word of mouth. And you already know a lot of folklore yourself. If you know fairy tales, folk tales, jokes, riddles, rhymes, various games that you might have played on the playground. All of those are things that we tend to learn from people in a face-to-face context. So folklore is important to everybody in all places, but I think it's especially important in West Virginia because we live in a state that was kind of born out of legends. So as you know, here on West Virginia Day, West Virginia was part of Virginia originally, and the reason why West Virginia became its own state had to do with things around the Civil War, but also to do with the fact that people in the western part of Virginia just felt themselves to be culturally really different from people in the rest of Virginia. And a lot of what was different for them culturally had to do with the way they lived and the kinds of experiences they had and the stories that they told about those experiences. The term mountaineer in connection with West Virginians actually appeared for the first time in 1803 when a man who was one of the delegates to the State House in Virginia was angry about things that were going on in the western part of the state. He thought that they weren't getting all the good stuff like people in the eastern part of Virginia were. And instead of signing his name to this letter, he signed himself as a mountaineer. Of course, a huge part of West Virginia's folklore these days has to do with our beloved cryptids. You know, Mothman, Braxy, Snallygaster. We're going to talk more about them later. But part of what's interesting to me about cryptids is that they're just kind of the most recent iteration of the kind of folklore that's really popular in West Virginia. You might know a book that was written by a woman named Ruth Ann Musick, who taught folklore at Fairmont State University, called The Telltale Lilac Bush. And that was a book that was full of local legends from all over the state of West Virginia, some of which may have led to the kinds of stories that we have about cryptids these days. Local legends are stories that are told in places that are usually about either a historical event that happened there or a local landmark that's really important to people. So they're rooted in local history, but the story usually begins where the real history leaves off. Nevertheless, I think you can see how those kinds of stories are really kind of early versions of the sort of cryptid tales that we tell now. Maybe you're the kind of kid, because I was that kind of kid, who finds scary stories really scary. But part of what's interesting about being a folklorist is that we not only talk about the stories themselves, but also about what the stories mean and why they're important to people. And I think that cryptids are really, really important to West Virginians right now because there's something that we can really claim as our own. And cryptids and their stories are really one of our own homegrown products that really belong exclusively to us and that we share with each other. And that, to me, is what makes them really, really important in contemporary West Virginia folklore. I know that for me, having had parents who were both West Virginia natives, a lot of what I know about their family history isn't from the genealogy that they did or from family trees, but from the stories that they've told me about their ancestors and their ancestors' ancestors that have been passed down over time. You never know how long a story is going to continue after you tell it. So start thinking about what your own stories are and start sharing them with other people.